this time it's the right one. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to dive into part 1 of a mini series I'm going to do to cover all things video, and it's going to be all about video settings. We are going to set up our camera, and our camera of choice today is the Canon M50. You can also follow this guide if you have a Canon M50 Mark II, because the settings are almost all the same. Why this camera? Well, because it's one of the most popular consumer cameras right now on the market. So, let's go! When you turn the Canon M50 for the first time right out of the box and you press the menu button, you will be in front of this. This is a simplified user interface that won't let you tweak any settings, or almost not tweak any settings. So that needs to change. So we are going to press on the set button or simply tap on screen on OK. And then we are going to change the menu display from guided to standard. You'll see that the screen is going back to the live view. Now we repress on menu and we are going to disable the mode guide, because that explains every single mode each time you are changing the mode on your knob here. And we can also change the feature guide. We are going to go to the first page of our settings menu, which is the red tab with the little camera icon. And on page 1, we are going to change the shooting mode. By default, we are in movie auto exposure. What that means is that the camera decides your aperture and your shutter speed when you are shooting video. And that's something that we don't know. We want full control, so we are going to change this to manual exposure. So you select, you press OK. Then we are going to go back to the menu and we are going to change the movie record quality. So the Canon M50 and the M50 Mark II come with 5 default record sizes. By default, it's set to 1080p 30 frames a second. What most of the users are going to want to do is go to 4K 24 frames a second. And if you have a Canon M50 Mark II, well, you can do that because you have uncropped 4K. But if you have a Canon M50 Mark I, like me, well, 4K, I'm sorry, is severely cropped and you lose your autofocus. So that's something that you don't want to use. My recommendation is to go to 1080p 24 frames a second. On your menu, it's 23.98, and I will cover the other record sizes in the next video, because each has its purpose. So we can select 1080p Full HD 24 frames a second. Next, sound recording. By default, it's on auto, and like you know, we don't like auto. So we are going to manual. Below is the record level, and this is something that you will have to tweak depending on the microphone you are using, or the location, or the situation you are in. So my recommendation is you plug your mic and you do a little test. You need to be paying attention to that little white square on the bottom of your screen. That little square shouldn't go over the number 12 on that graph. Now let's go to tab number 3 and we are going to change the white balance. By default, again, it's auto white balance. It's not the worst, but it's also not the best, because then your image is going to change in color depending on the lighting, and if there's a cloud, it's going to change temperature, and that's something that you don't like to have in your videos. So for general purpose, I would select daylight. It's 5200 Kelvin. It's good when you are outside, inside. If you are shooting videos in a studio, like these kind of videos, you should go to the color temperature and change it there, but you need to match it with your lights. So I'm using a Godox SL60 just right up my face, and I know that that light has a 5600 Kelvin color temperature, so I change it on my camera to 5600 Kelvin. Then we have a critical one. It's the picture style on the bottom of page number 3. By default, again, picture style is set to auto, and that's something we don't like. So we are going to change that, and you have a ton of different picture styles, but I personally would recommend you to use standard if you are just filming standard videos like your family or simply general purpose video. It's the one that gives you the best results in color, saturation and contrast. Now if you want to go a little bit further and you want to dive deeper into color grading, etc., well, you can also install custom picture profile, up to 3 user defined picture profiles. I have a video where I explain how to install CineStyle just right above here, but you have other picture profiles on the market like EOS HD C-Log, so that's up to you. You need to look a little bit, but that's for more advanced users who like to color grade their footage and spend some time in the lumetri panel when they are editing. On page number 4, we have the autofocus method. We are going to surprisingly let it with the default settings, which is the autofocus with face tracking. What that means is that when you are going out and you are going to vlog and put your camera in front of you, well, it's gonna lock on your smiley face and it will be always in focus, which is what you want. I am sure of it. On page number 5, we have a very specific setting, which is MF peaking setting. What MF peaking setting does, if you turn it on, well, actually, if you use a manual lens, so this is a manual lens. It's the Canon FD 50mm f1.4. It's a vintage lens. I have a adapter for EOS M. I turn on focus peaking, so that focus peaking is on. My levels are on high, and you can change the color, red, yellow or blue. And when I shoot manual, what I do is simply I turn my screen just like this. And what focus peaking does is actually it's going to put a little blue or red or yellow highlight around the object that is in focus, which is very, very useful. I would definitely recommend to use this if you are using manual focus lenses. Just below you have the IS settings, the image stabilization, and that's also something we are going to tweak. So by default it's on enabled. When you enter the menu, you will see that there's also an enhanced mode. It sounds great, but it isn't. Actually, when you put enhanced, it's going to even more crop in your image, and then your corners of your image are going to start being warpy. It's very, 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 very bad to use that setting. I really don't recommend it. You can leave it on enable, but I personally use disable because, yeah, if you're using a gimbal or you want the most natural looking footage with a little bit of movement, or simply you trust warp stabilization in post, well, you can leave it like that. With a little bit of practice, handheld shooting is even more stable than digital image stabilization. So just practice, just do your moves and it's gonna be okay. You don't need that digital IS. Just below you have the button function. We are going to change the fully press setting. By default there is no function, and what it does is simply changing the behavior of your shutter button here, and we are going to change that to start stop movie record. It's more convenient to use the shutter button here than use that little knob here that you will always miss or look after. Simply the same behavior as shooting photo. Now that the camera is ready to shoot video and get the best result out of it, well, you can go out and shoot or wait for part 2. We will cover more in-depth specific settings and tips and tricks to make cinematic videos. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments, there's a comment section down below. You can always ask any question you want. And if you are new to the channel, my name is Thomas. There's a subscribe button just below with a little notification bell that you can hit, so you will be notified when I'm releasing part 2. And until then, well, see ya!